Welcome back. How do you like my clickbait title? Some of you are probably getting ready to downvote this video, but before you do, let me show you what the problem is. So, there are many different ways that people have come up with to do sprinting in blueprints, but most of them all rely around this idea of changing the max walk speed in the character movement component. Most of us are using character movement components, and so we set the max walk speed. And the problem is that none of those methods people are using actually work. You may think they work, but I'm going to show you how to break your sprint. And you can try this on your local project and see that it actually doesn't work. And we'll talk about later why. But first, let's see what happens. Okay, so this sprint that I'm using here is our gameplay ability-based one. So this is better than what most people are doing because it has some local prediction to it, but it's still not perfect. So basically what we're doing here is we run this gameplay ability where we change the max walk speed on the owning client, then we replicate up to the server, change the walk speed there, and it replicates. And same with removing. We're pretty much doing the same thing. So this one's better than what you normally see, but I'm going to show you how to break it. So you want to press the tilde key to bring up the console command, and you want to type p.net show corrections, and it's going to be space 1, not equals 1. Okay? And what that's going to do is show the corrections. Now that one will stay on. That setting will stay on for our entire session. But this other setting that we're going to run, which is net pktlag, which stands for packet log, equals 500. This one actually has to be set each time you hit play on Play in Editor. So we're going to simulate a half a second of packet lag. Okay? And so what's going to happen is that we're going to get these here. And so what those are showing us is that it's having to correct our position. And if you look closely at the screen, you may or may not be able to see this with the recording or not. But there's basically some jitter that's happening when it's doing these corrections, and it's happening when we apply the sprint, and then also when we let off. And so if you look at these here, there's a green one and a red one. The red one is the wrong position, and the green one is the correct position where it's moving you to. And there's some settings in the character movement component that basically say, hey, if the difference between the server and the client are more than this certain amount, which it's not a huge amount, it basically teleports you from the one to the other, and that's when we're seeing this jitter. And I thought that maybe this was because they weren't lining up perfectly, right? Meaning that in this case, the client is starting to sprint before the server does, and so then it's basically throwing you back. But I actually went and added some custom code to make it so that the client waited until the exact millisecond that the server switched it, and it still does this. It still doesn't work. And this is because the character movement component is not being told what's going on, and so it's fighting you. And this is why there's actually no way in blueprints to create a sprint. You can't do it. And you would think that you could do something that simple, but it's actually impossible. And I'm going to show you some Unreal documentation that actually explains this. So now you know what the issue is. Actually, just to show you, you might be saying, well, that's the gameplay ability stuff. I do it differently than that. So I went in here and built what is the most common one I was able to find on the internet as to how most people are doing this, and what's generally the accepted solution, which is basically that when you start sprinting, you call a run at server RPC, you set the max walk speed in this replicated on rep notify, and then the walk speed gets set here in the notify. So we're setting it on the server, and then when it hits the notify, it's also going to set it on the client and the client proxies. And then we basically are doing the same thing on the reverse. And this one's actually worse. This one's really bad. But this is what most people are doing. Okay, and so I don't have to do the show net corrections again, but I do have to do the net packet log. It gets reset every time. And this one's really bad too, because it takes a half a second before you start sprinting. And then, I don't know if you saw that, but it like did this massive teleport backwards when we end. So we basically go back in time half a second. It's really nasty. So you definitely got to make sure that you test everything with anything movement related with p-dot show net corrections, and you definitely want to run some packet lag. Now you might also be thinking, well, you tested with half a second of packet log. No one has that high. I also tested with 50 milliseconds of packet lag, and it's noticeable on that too. It's not as noticeable, but you know, if you're trying to do things the right way and make a game that's actually playable over the internet, you can't have your character teleporting back in time just because someone has 50 milliseconds of packet lag. Okay, so let's take a look at the documentation that Epic has that explains this. So I'm on the character movement component, and they talk here, advanced topic, adding new movement abilities to character movement. Okay, execute only on client. Result fails in network games, so we're not even interested in that one. Server-only RPCs. Works in network game, however, there are a few problems with the way it works. There will be a noticeable delay for the client using the ability, and the movement will appear to be smooth instead of being instantaneous change of location. Well, they're talking about a teleport here, but it's actually worse than that, because we are getting instantaneous change of location, and we didn't want to teleport. I think they're wrong here when they say this works, but it's far from ideal. The correct interpretation is it doesn't work. Approach 3, server RPC and local trigger. Works in networks games, but with, now they say rare, potentially serious side effects. Well, we found one of those rare, doesn't seem that rare to me, sprint isn't complicated. But basically it shows here, it says, but with some important caveats, and can still break in real networked environments. This is a fancy way of saying if there's any lag, it's not going to work. The main issue is that if the client is corrected back in time before the teleport was triggered, we're using a sprint, not a teleport, client won't know to re-trigger the teleport as they repeat their pending move list. And this is the key, this pending move list. Teleport will appear to have been lost on the client side. This will make the game feel unresponsive, and in certain cases, especially in bad network conditions. So it's bad. The correct implementation is approach number 4. Unfortunately, it is not a simple solution. So it works in network games with some implementation care. So basically what you end up doing here is that you end up building your own F-saved move character. And these are basically moves that you have to build that get put into the movement queue that the character movement component is processing. A side effect of this is that you'll also get network replay built in for free, whereas if you used approach 1 through 3, the network replay is not going to work. So this is the correct way to do it. This is the only way to do it in multiplayer. And this is the reason I said that you can't do sprint in blueprints. There is one other way you can do movement effects without doing this, and that's the method that we talked about in the root motion, and that's using the gameplay tasks. And the only reason that works is because the gameplay tasks, if you go look at their code, are actually sending moves into the queue inside the character movement component. But that's not going to work for sprint because we got to change the speed. It's not just I guess it depends on what kind of sprint you wanted. If you want a sprint that's more like a lunge, then you could do that with the gameplay ability tasks. But in our case, we're going to build a sprint that basically uses up energy until it runs out. So meaning you don't know when you start it how long you'll be sprinting. And also, if you let off the key to stop sprinting, it stops running and stops charging you energy. But basically we have to build this F-saved move character, and we have to build our own network packet. Here's actually the code for that in the character movement component, and this is what I had to basically modify. So in the new plugin that we're going to be updating today, we now have a OWS character movement component. that's been customized. But basically, built in, Epic has jump pressed and wants to crouch. Those are the ones that are built in. And I got these reserve flags that they're not using, and then we ended up using this custom flag 0 for our sprinting ability. So that's kind of the backstory on how the character movement component works and why all movement-related abilities, other than the ones you can implement with gameplay tasks in the ability system, have to be programmed in C++. You can't do them in Blueprint. Okay, so let's go back to, I'm going to close this. This was just a copy of the project. It wasn't our actual project. I don't do any work in our actual project while we're not recording. And I'm going to close this, and we need to update our plugin for 4.2.2. But there's a problem. Gameplay effect template has been removed in 4.2.2. Be sure to reparent all your gameplay effects blueprints from gameplay effect template to gameplay effect before upgrading to 4.2.2. Once you upgrade, your blueprints will be corrupted, cannot be fixed. There's no way around that. Well, there's no easy way around that. You can go in and hack your INI files to temporarily point to the other one and then go change them all and change them back, but it takes forever. So what we want to do here, I've made it a list, and we want to go, and before we upgrade to 4.2.2, which we will be doing today, so you can stop the video right now and go download 4.2.2 if you don't have it, is that, let's see, we're going to go open our project. We're going to find all of these and we're going to reparent them. They removed gameplay effect template. I didn't think I was using gameplay effect template, but apparently way back a long time ago I must have, and then probably copied from that, because all these really old ones are pointing to that. So we got to go reparent all these. So we're going to go into ability system, abilities. Here's the first two. Sadly, you have to open it to reparent it. And gameplay effect. So see, here's the bad one, effect template. And you can see up here, parent class, that this was using the bad one. And you actually can also see that without opening it. So now that I've switched one, I'll show you here. So this one's now pointed to gameplay effect, and this one's pointed to gameplay effect template. So that's how I went through all of them and built this list. So we got energy regen, doing mana regen. This won't take too long, so I'm not going to stop the video. Gameplay effect. Parent. Okay, we'll just start going through the folders. Reparent. The gameplay effect template was, they were just kind of showing you an example of like what you could do, a suggested way of building like a base template. And I think they realized that it was probably just cluttering things up and wasn't really needed. So they finally removed it. But what will happen is that if you miss one of these, when you go to open it to try to reparent it, it will crash. Crash your editor. And there isn't an easy way around that. You can use something called game name redirects in your INI file to temporarily make it so that you can open it, and then you can fix it. I should have kept track of which folders these were in. The newer ones seem to be fine. It's the old ones that are problematic. Yeah, there's AoE attack effect. Gameplay effect. There we go. And I think all of these are bad. Yep. If you're using a version, if you started with a version of the plugin after April 1st, I've actually removed all this old stuff. And I started doing a new set of gameplay abilities that are better. Some of these old ones are not, they're not done the right way. They're not a good they're not a good example to follow, and so I've removed them from. So you may not have to do this if you started on a copy of the project after April 1st. But if it's before that, you'll have all this junk in here that'll cause problems. And it'd be nice if you could just delete them, because I would delete them, but deleting them is a nightmare with all of the dependencies and everything. So it's just easier to do this for now. We might clean them up later. Okay. One more. This one. Okay, cool. So now that we've gone and fixed all these, we can close the project because we're now going to upgrade to 422. Now you're going to want to come here and download the new plugin, 2019-0405 for 4.22. And so we're going to go back to here, and we're going to switch Unreal Engine version. And we're going to change it to 422. Okay, and then we're going to come in here to plugins, and as we always do, we're going to delete the plugin. I've already downloaded the zip file. Go into this, grab the OWS plugin folder, copy, and come back to plugins and paste. There weren't many differences. I think I had to edit 3 lines of code to go to 422. It wasn't too bad. So this is now going to have the 422 version on the plugin. And if we go here, we open up this U project, we're on 422 as well. So let's open it up. Different engine. Yes. Hopefully this is going to work. I didn't actually try this. It usually does, if I remember right. If this doesn't, what you have to do is you have to end up opening up the solution in Visual Studio and rebuilding it. But I think that this method usually works. I'm pretty sure we did it when we upgraded from 4.20 to 4.21. I have to go back and look at that video to be sure. Sometimes what can happen is the intermediate and saved folders will cause you trouble. But, yeah, I'm not sure. Let it run for a bit here. Oh, that's okay, sweet. That wasn't too bad. And again, if you started with the version after April, you'll already be upgraded onto the 422, and you won't need to do any of this when you get to this video. I've been having trouble recently with, you know, the video series is now almost a year old, and so many things are changing that it's hard to not do anything to mess up previous videos. I did remove attack with weapon collision in this last plugin update, and so then when people used that one and got to I think the first video where we're doing it, they're like, hey, attack with weapon collision's not there anymore. So I'm probably going to have to add some dummy one back just so people can keep following the videos. But it is difficult, especially when UE4 changes things. Not just me changing things. So when we get this open, we are going to build the sprint the correct way. What I have added in this new plugin is I have added a start sprinting and stop sprinting connected to that custom flag 0 that we saw in the source code. That is going to give us the ability to properly notify the CMC inside our game playability. And when we do that, all the net corrections and all the jitter go away and everything's perfect all the time. which is what we want. We want our players to have the best gameplay experience, even when their lag spikes. That's one of the goals of the gameplay ability system. Stuck on 95 here. It's probably when I get this open, it's going to rebuild shaders and everything, which actually might be a nightmare. I may have to stop this video. We'll see. I just realized that, you know, if you're doing like a small, like, you know, the OWS starter project, it doesn't take very long to build shaders. However, with the Paragon assets, yeah. I'll give it a minute here, but if not, I'm going to put a pause in here while I go and let it build the shaders. Okay, I'm actually going to stop the video, and I'll be back when these shaders finish. Okay, so that took a long time. Probably close to 30 minutes. So you might want to walk away. And then once it got past that 95% and got into it, it had to compile 10,000 shaders, and that took, I don't know, 5 minutes. So when we get in here, you'll see there's a big problem. And someone warned me about this in advance, so I was expecting it. Our sky's gone. So we got to go fix it. So we're going to go to time of day folder, our sky BP, and what happened is it lost the static mesh. But you won't be able to find it, and here's why. I'm going to put it back to where it was. So show engine content wasn't on, and we're going to need that temporarily. So we're going to turn on show engine content down here from view options. We're going to go back to our sky BP, and we're going to type in sky, and we now have these two here, engine sky sphere and engine map template sky sphere. I'm going to choose the engine sky. This will not show up if engine content isn't visible, so you got to do that first. And you'll see there's a problem. It's kind of a small sky, bit of a problem there. So we'll go back in here, and I found that the old settings that got lost were 400. Okay, and hopefully that's all we needed. I'm going to go back and turn off the engine content. It's annoying having to look through it. And okay, so we're back in our world here. I'm going to go hit play just to see how things are working. Okay. Oh, we're going to switch our lighting here. I don't want to play in the dark. 600. Okay, so we got this sprint here that we hit on left shift, and as we showed previously, doesn't work. So we got to fix that. So we're going to come up here, and we're going to go to our sprint, and you see we've got this apply sprint and remove sprinting. Well, for the new one, we're not going to need that. It's just going to be called sprint. And if you're using the version, if you started after April 1st, you're already going to have sprint sitting here, and you're going to be good. But for all of those of us who do not, we're going to have to build one. So new gameplay ability blueprint, gameplay ability. We're just going to call it sprint. We only need one. I'll show you why. And we're going to start building this out. Okay, so first thing we want to do is what we often do, which is get avatar actor from actor info. And we want to cast it to our third person character with abilities. And we're going to want to set a variable. So we're going to make a variable over here called avatar actor. At some point, I'm able to build a template that has a lot of this stuff built in, just so we don't have to keep doing it on all of them. But we're going to want third person character with abilities, object reference. I'm going to drag this out here as a set. We need something else actually before this, because of something that we're doing here. We're actually going to need a bool, was ability committed. oops, not bite, bulk. And we're going to start out by setting that each time to false. We need this because later on there's some logic that needs to happen because there's multiple conditions for stopping. And of course, end ability if it fails. If you keep an ability open, this actually reminded me, the thing I always forget, class defaults, instance per actor, and uncheck server respects remote ability to cancel. This one's problematic. Okay, so that's going to get avatar actor, and test when I made this blue. Okay, next we need to commit the ability. Commit ability. This will charge our cost and our cooldown. And after that, we're going to want to set that yes, we committed this ability. Yep. I think we used that. I'm trying to remember. Yes. The reason we had to do that is to support the fact that you could hit end ability here without making it here. So, you'll see why later. I almost forgot myself for a second. Let's see. Commit the ability. And since it's kind of like go, we're going to make it green. Okay, and then we're going to apply the gameplay tag and our cost over time. Just going to leave a placeholder here for it. Apply gameplay effect to owner. We'll build that later. Okay, so here's where we're going to do something different. We are going to use our avatar actor, and we're going to get OWS movement component. Now this means we don't have to do any casting because I've already built that, this saved reference into it in our underlying character with ability. So it's all tied together. We're going to do start sprinting. So this makes a call into the character movement component using those flags. It sends the custom network packet. And it knows not to send this on the server side, so automatically handles it. And we're going to call this call start sprinting on the OWS character movement component. Give it some room. There we go. And make that red. And then we need to stop it when they press. So we're going to do wait, input, release. Now because we're doing this, we actually have to tie this to the input component. We can't use a try activate ability, otherwise these things don't work. So we'll be doing that later, better remember. This is a cool one. Anytime you want like a, you know, hold something for a certain amount of time to power up, and then you can grab this time held. It's kind of cool. And you're thinking, why do we just end the ability there? Well, don't worry. We're going to fix that later. You'll see how it works. So we're going to grab this, wait for input release. Make this one purple. Purple, pink, something along that lines. Okay, this one gets a little more complicated. And we're going to do wait for attribute change threshold. And the attribute is going to be our energy. make sure you choose this one here, the OWS attribute energy. And we're going to say when less than, and we're going to have to set up something for this comparison value. So we're going to add a variable. We're going to call it continuing resource cost. Oops. And that's going to be the amount on every tick that we're going to set up in our effect. And I think the default value is 15. It is 15. So I'm going to set it to 15. So what this here is going to do is that when we have less than 15, it's going to stop this ability. We only want to trigger it once. And we need to do a comparison. So I initially made the mistake of thinking that it only fired on change when the less than value, but that is not the case. I was very confused about that for a second until I saw this matches comparison. So it's actually going to call this on change every time that energy changes, but it's only going to set the comparison to true. So we only want to do something on true. And when we do, we're going to end the ability. And the reason we're able to do this is because we're actually going to go build a custom on end ability. And when that happens, we're going to use this was ability committed, which is, let's see, get, we do a branch, and on true, we're going to grab our avatar actor, we're going to grab our get OWS movement component, this is the custom movement component, and we're going to call stop sprinting. So this makes sure when we end ability, stop sprinting, as long as we already were sprinting, so which is why we're only going to do this on true. And we don't have to call end ability here because the ability is already being ended, but we're also going to make sure we remove gameplay effect from owner with granted tags. I think we already have combat sprinting. We do. Perfect. Okay. And so this is going to be, oops, a little too much. Stop sprinting and remove cost gameplay effect on end ability. And this other one here was end ability when out of energy. And I made that one this light blue color here. Okay, so the only spot we've got left to handle is this one, which is apply gameplay tag. It's also the continuing cost effect. And I made this one yellow. Okay, now we're going to need to build a tag for this, and then we also need a initial cost and a cooldown. So we're going to build those two as well, and we want to hook up here that the activation is blocked in the case of a global cooldown. And I think that's everything else. So we're going to build some gameplay effects. Okay, so we first that actually adds the sprinting. I guess we'll reuse this one. So we're adding this sprinting tag, but we also need to add a cost over time. And so we're going to go to modifiers, And we're going to grab energy. And we're going to do minus 15 on 1 second tick. And we're not going to execute it on the first tick, or at the start of the first tick, because we're going to use an initial cost to hit that one. And I think that's everything we need for that sprint effect. So that's what's going to get assigned here. And we're going to rename that. Okay, sprint. Tag, continuing, cost, and tag. Okay. And then we're going to create another one. Gameplay. So the nice thing now here is the gameplay effect template's not here anymore. So we don't have to worry about accidentally picking it. And we're going to do sprint initial cost. So it's going to hit as an instant, and it's going to charge us that first 15. And we're going to do energy. Subtract 15. And we're going to go back to our currently I renamed the wrong thing. Oops. Sorry about that. Gotta go back here and change the effect to sprint. It was the effect I wanted to rename. Sprint, continuing, cost, and tag. There we go. And then finally we needed cooldown. So another gameplay effect. Sprint, cooldown. This is so you can't just keep activating it over and over. And we're just going to do like a has duration. Let's say you can only activate it once a second. And then we got to add our granted global cooldown. Okay. And then we're going to go back into our sprint. We're going to set our sprint initial cost into the cost, and our sprint cooldown into the cooldown. So that will stop us from... Yeah, and if this doesn't open, for some reason this thing's gone corrupt. This happened to me earlier too. It doesn't open the ability graph each time. So anyway, if it doesn't, you just got to go in here and double click this to get it to reopen the tab. First time I was like, what is happening? And we got our continuing costs. That makes sure it keeps charging us. And this one should be removing the one that adds the combat sprinting, which is the right one. So let's give it a try and see how it works. So first going to do it without any lag, and then we'll do the same setup as the other and show the difference. Okay, so you can see our energy bar there in yellow, and it's charging it, and we're sprinting, and it stops. And I start sprinting. I can't just do it right away again. I have to wait another second. Cool. So the cooldown seems to be working. Now let's make sure that when we run out of energy, it stops us from sprinting. Okay, that one didn't seem to work. We're still sprinting here. It didn't stop us. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so go into our sprint. Let's see if we missed anything here. So when the continuing resource cost is less than 15, that's what we want. Oops. The on change is getting done every time energy changes, but the matching comparison is only getting sent on true. It calls end ability. I don't need to know if it was canceled. It is stopping when we let up the key. So that one's working. This one's not. Interesting, because it exactly matches my demo one. I had the same issue when I was testing it, but this branch is what fixed the problem. Let's print string here. Out of energy. See if that fires. We were obviously below 15. So we're watching our log down at the bottom to see. It did not fire. Okay. So let's go back here. And let's, every time that the value changes, let's print it out. Let's see if it's correctly reading the value. It is not. That is not good. Okay. Clicking the wrong one. Okay, so the on change is not getting called. Interesting. It is working on the demo project. That's exactly the same. Attribute set energy less than. Comparison resource cost is 15. Continuing resource cost. Trigger once. Interesting. Let's make sure all our class defaults match. Since per actor, local predicted. It is costing us the right amount. But this change threshold, this does not seem to be... Let's make sure it gets here. Start change threat. Oh, hold on. Gotta check something here. Okay. Just want to make sure I did run dedicated server. I may have done this. I may have done this without showing you this. Sorry about that. I may have just, out of habit, clicked it as soon as it opened. But usually what will happen is every time you upgrade, this run dedicated server is going to get unchecked. So make sure that you check that. I may have done that without showing it. Okay. Give it a second here to catch up. Not even showing it's getting there. That's very interesting. Oh! Okay, I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. I'm not thinking clearly here. We never switched it to be used, this new sprint. We're still using the old apply and remove sprinting. So let's go fix that. Let's go to our third-person blueprint. And we're going to go to the sprint under the input. We're going to disconnect those and delete this left shift. We're going to pick one of these numbers to run it under. I think I'm just going to pick 0. I'm afraid of 0 though because at 1.0 it didn't work, but I'm pretty sure it works now. So 0 is going to do it, but we really don't want, we want to still use the left shift. So we're going to go up into our project settings and we're going to hack ability 0. We're basically going to say that's not one of our spell slots. And under use ability 9. Ha! Okay. That's why I'm always afraid of 0. It doesn't have one in this project. This is a really old project where I started a year ago. So we're going to have to add one. And we're going to call it use ability 0, just so we remember that that's what it's connected to. We're going to use the 0 key. And then we're also going to hit the plus here. And we're going to add left shift. We had to make sure we remove that other one, otherwise this one might not fire. Okay, so now we should actually be using the right sprint. And it's probably going to work now. Or not work, because this is the first time we're testing it. We'll see. Oh, look at that. It stops us from moving. So there's a good reason for that. Haha, it's kind of working. So let's go check this out. In the third-person character with abilities, character movement, you see here it now says OWS character with movement component. And there's a new setting. I think it's near the top. Sprint speed multiplier and sprint acceleration multiplier. So we're just going to go 2 and 2. And that's why it was setting us to not moving at all. Let's give it a try now. Look at that. We're running. It said start change threshold. Oh, and look at that. It stopped. See, it says out of energy. I'm still holding shift. I never let up. I'm still holding it. There, now I let off shift. So it did the out of energy like it's supposed to. And there it did it again. It stopped again when we got below that 15 threshold. Okay, so now to restart so I can get my energy back. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to move all these stupid print strings. And then I want to show you the whole purpose of this to begin with, which was to show that we have now defeated the character movement component. No longer will it haunt us with net corrections. Okay, so I'm going to bring up the console, p.show, no, p.net show corrections 1. So now it's on, and here we go. We're running, but we don't have any lag yet. Okay. Now sometimes in the play-in editor, the very first one, let's see here, net packet lag 500. Sometimes the very first one will do an issue. Yep, just like that. And what's happening is that, I looked into this in the code, they're actually the first thing you activate. I could have activated something, I could have activated like our light grenade to get it to fix it, but the first one does not, bummer. Here's the problem with persistent energy. It didn't set me back to full. Anyway, the first activation of something after you change net packet lag does not actually have the lag yet. There's some kind of weird bug there going on. I noticed that when I've been doing some stuff with this projectile stuff, which uses latency. So the first thing you activate after it, you can't... that was weird. I didn't even do anything. Okay, so here we go. And now we're running. Well, that's not good. Okay, maybe we have a problem with our letting off. Okay, wait, something else is going on. I'm not even sprinting. Okay. Interesting. Okay, let's double check. I don't get this effect when I'm on the OWS starter project, so probably got something messed up here. Let's go through all the settings. Okay, so we got our sprint speed multiplier, our sprint acceleration multiplier, that's good. And then in our sprint, we're starting sprinting here, which is sending it into the character movement component. And then we stop sprinting here. Make sure I did that right. And we remove combat sprinting. That looks good. try getting rid of the... Okay, so our shownet corrections is still on, but our net packet lag is not. Turn on 500. Wow, just moving. I haven't even tried to sprint. I wonder if we're doing something else in this blueprint that's changing our walk speed. Let's see. So our max walk speed is 400, walk speed crouch is 200, so then let's turn a 2x multiplier on that. They don't get the same effect. Let's go to our event graph. I don't remember doing anything to set. So we don't need these anymore. Apply sprinting, remove sprinting, we can dump those. Don't need those abilities. It's interesting. Might have to look into it some more and see what's going on there, because I have not seen that before when we're not even sprinting and it's throwing corrections. Because when I do it over on the new starter project, everything's perfect. It's normal for it to do that. At the start there, it has trouble figuring out where to put you. I ran out my energy. Okay, so you can turn on net packet lag. Ooh, oh, very bad ping. Interesting. I wonder if they've done something to set that 500 is too high on the threshold. Hit limit of 96 saved moves. Ah, something else. Something else is sending moves. What other abilities we've got? This might have helped us find another bug. See what's turned on automatically. Okay, so we turn on energy regen and we turn on mana regen. Those are the only ones we apply, those effects. There was another system. No, it's not in here. There's another system in my starter project where I was trying to do something with the projectile, but that's not here. Interesting. Something is sending extra moves. Okay, well that's something to look into for a future video, but it's still, if we can get a quick window here, this still fixes the case where we can sprint and stop sprinting and there's no corrections. And that was the goal of what we were trying to do here. We may have inadvertently found something else, but the goal was to be able to do sprinting without any net corrections and no lag. The player didn't realize that they were actually starting to sprint half a second before the server got the message, and yet everything was perfectly smooth and corrected, which is what the character movement component is made to do. Yeah, should have made it so it didn't take me any energy so I can test it. Anyway, I'll look into what's going on there. I feel like something else is inserting moves into the queue that are getting timed out. But I'll take a look and we'll see. Until next time, see ya.